Listen to AM 560 The Answer online at 560theanswer.com, on the AM 560 mobile app, on your Alexa-powered smart speaker, and on TuneIn, iHeart, and on Odyssey. America First with Sebastian Gorka, today at 3, right before Sean Thompson at 4 on AM 560 The Answer.
Top of the morning, Dan and Amy. Budweiser was supposed to feature the Clydesdale horses at several events in Springfield, Missouri to promote their brand, but the shows have been canceled due to what Anheuser-Busch says are safety concerns for their employees.
Oh, they brought this upon themselves. Know your audience.
Well,
Marketing 101.
Not that it should ever engender safety concerns, or probably even that it does, but it seems to me this is easily solved. Just get a bunch of people who identify as Clydesdale horses to show up to those events in Springfield, Missouri.
And they
right?
can get some furries.
Exactly. Yeah. You know what's interesting? I heard on the radio yesterday a Real Men of Genius commercial. I hadn't heard one of those in a long time.
Real Men of Genius. Oh, I used to love those.
All right.
Or
Thank
the Bud
you,
Light
Mr.
guys.
Yes. Thank you, Mr. Push-Up Bra Inventor. Yes, exactly.
Or what
Real Men of
up?
Genius.
What's up? Remember those guys?
Yeah, no. Yes, I
But
do.
do you remember? Yeah.
Terrible. But I wonder
But you
if
remember it decades later.
I wonder if the Real Men of Genius is like a way to try to deflect or assuage some of the response they're getting for Dylan Mulvaney. Oh, speaking of Real Men of Genius, thank you, Mr. Sports Bra Inventors, too. Dylan Mulvaney would like to thank you. Actually,
kind of need boobs for the sports bra. I mean, I'm just saying.
Actually, Dylan Mulvaney could be in a Real Men of Genius commercial.
Oh, really?
Because it's
How would that
genius
go?
what he's pulling off, isn't it?
Well, he's an actor. He was in Book of Mormon on Broadway. I mean, he knows exactly what he's doing.
We live in a world where a man who masquerades as a sportswoman is showered with praise and money, while an actual sportswoman is branded a stupid effing bitch and punched in the face. Yeah, that's about where we're at. Those are the words of Brendan O'Neill. He is the chief political writer at Spiked, and he joins us now. Brendan, thanks for being with us again. Appreciate it.
It's a pleasure.
This world we live in now, the interesting thing, that was one recent piece of yours, but a more entertaining piece was this sort of bizarre development in Britain that a Communist Party offshoot in the UK has come out against the gender identity movement.
That's right, they have. This is the Communist Party of Britain, which is an offshoot from the Communist Party of Great Britain. It's very People's Front of Judea. It's a very old-fashioned Soviet-era Communist Party, a bunch of anoraks stuck in the past. But they made a really good statement on the trans issue, on the issue of gender self-ID, and they said, look, it's a load of nonsense. It will harm women's rights. It will allow men to go into women-only spaces and into women's sports and into areas of work traditionally preserved for women in terms of promotion and so on. So they said it's sexist, it's misogynistic, and it's not something that we should pursue. And it caused a huge meltdown because, of course, on the left in the UK, as I'm sure is the case in America as well, you're supposed to be really pro-trans. You're supposed to be a trans ally, trans-friendly. So the fact that these communists came out and said, listen, this has gone too far and we now need to stand up for women, it was very interesting. And I think it was a very welcome intervention, even if it came from a quite eccentric party.
Well, the other thing that's interesting about the argument the Communist Party made, a phrase I never really thought I would say, is gender identity ideology is well suited to the needs of the capitalist class, focusing as it does on individual as opposed to collective rights. Boy, that's a you got to give them committed. Got to give them credit. They are committed to workers of the world uniting. I mean, that's at least this old guard Communist Party in the UK, and. But the capitalist class, there is something to be said, actually, about that, because all of this and this corporate sponsorship of individuals like Dylan Mulvaney, I mean, is materialism, which is right out of Marx.
I think they're right about that, actually. They may have got to the right conclusion for the wrong reasons or in the wrong way, but I think they're right. I think capitalism loves transgenderism. I mean, we can see that all around us. We can see it in the way in which Dylan Mulvaney has been showered with advertising deals and money to promote things, including Tampax, which is really odd and has offended a lot of women, but also in the way in which every big bank, every corporation, every hedge fund, they all go in for the preferred pronouns stuff. We've got banks here in the UK which make their employees wear badges that don't only say their name but also declare their pronouns. You know, if you look at Pride Month, I don't know what it's like in the US, but Pride Month in Britain, there are just pride flags everywhere. It's like we've been invaded by some strange foreign army. Pride flags hang around the city of London for a whole month, including on banks, on big businesses. So capitalism loves the pride issue, and I think it's not that surprising. I think corporate bosses are probably quite happy if young people in particular are focusing exclusively on their bodies, changing their bodies, whereas pesky old generations in the past were more focused on changing the world and changing the workplace. And also, it's a very divisive creed. Identity politics is divisive. It keeps people in their place. It keeps people divided from each other. It lowers the possibility of people coming together and demanding change in society. So I actually think instinctively, the corporate world feels quite comfortable with transgenderism and identity politics.
Well, is the LGBTQ community under attack where you live?
I think the LGB community is under attack. So lesbian, gays and bisexual people. And they're actually, ironically, they're under attack from the LGBTQ lobby, which is this new lobby which is very pro-trans, very much in favor of young people blocking their puberty if they want to, taking hormones in their teen years, maybe having surgery after the age of 18. They're very much into that. And a lot of traditional gay rights groups from the 70s and 80s, people of a particular certain age, they're very much against that because they think it's a new form of conversion therapy for young gay people. So they're concerned that young gay boys, young gay men, are possibly being turned into so-called women, and young lesbians. There's a huge trend among young women who would traditionally have identified as lesbian to have their breasts removed, to take hormones, to grow moustaches, to break their voices, to become supposedly male. So I think lots of traditional LGB activists are concerned that lesbians in particular are being turned into men, which, you know, there's another country that does this and has been doing it for decades, and it's called Iran. Mm-hmm. Iran has the second highest number of transgender operations in the world after Thailand, because not because it's pro-trans, but because it is so deeply anti-gay. And it would prefer to turn a gay woman into a man and a gay man into a woman rather than accept homosexual people in society. So the fact that we're now mimicking some of that is very concerning.
You know, I don't know about what you're seeing in the UK with the same level of specificity you do. Here we've had 19 states that have passed bans now on puberty blockers and mutilation of children. You know, you want to do what you want to do after 18 years old to your body. That's your choice, but not before you're 18. So there's been some intercession there. There's obviously a sort of a battle that's still being waged about men participating in women's sports. And, you know, Riley Gaines is at the tip of that spear, as we saw this week. But you know, what's your handle on where things are going? To me, despite some people stepping forward like Riley Gaines, and despite some political leaders taking action at the state and local level, I see this going very much the way that marriage redefinition went, where it went from civil unions to the whole kettle of fish relatively quickly.
Yeah, that's a very good question. And I have moments of optimism and moments of pessimism. My optimism does actually come when I see people like Riley Gaines in the US, who I think is a heroine and is being incredibly brave, standing up to the foaming mob to make the case for women's rights and women's sport. There's lots of women in the UK. We're sometimes referred to as Turf Island. the New York
Yeah.
Times refer to us as TERF Island because we have a lot of TERFs, that is, trans exclusionary radical feminists, which is basically any woman who doesn't think a man can become a woman. So we have a lot of those here, and they're doing great work, very important work. So I'm optimistic on that level, but I think institutionally, in schools, in universities, in many workplaces, in the political sphere, sadly, I think it's going in the wrong direction. It's going in the direction of being post-truth, post-science, post-biology, and the adoption of this idea that you can change your sex with a click of your fingers, that it's acceptable to postpone puberty in children, which I think is a form of child abuse, that it's acceptable to subject young people of the age of 18 or 19 to life-changing surgeries that many of them come to regret. This hysteria has taken hold among the elites in particular. And we see it right at the top of the Biden administration in the US, and we see it at the top of political parties here in the UK. The leader of the Labour Party here, which is our version of the Democrats, he cannot say what a woman is. He cannot answer that question. And that's a form of hysteria, and it has taken grip amongst the influential people in society. I think there are huge, swelling numbers of ordinary working people, decent people, who are very skeptical about this ideology. And I think when they find their voice, we might see a good pushback.
Yeah, I mean, well, obviously we have the same thing in this country, as you know. Our most recently minted Supreme Court Justice, herself a woman, didn't know what or couldn't define what a woman is. I mean, it's the incredible times, but also too that corporate piece that we started talking about. I mean, that the Amazon ad recently that has, you were just talking about, that has a woman who grows a mustache and facial hair and then she's dancing around and she's very happy after she undergoes this transformation. I mean, the marketing power of a company as big as Amazon, that's a lot to go up against. So, whatever Ron DeSantis is doing in Florida or different governors and legislatures are doing in a handful of states, that is dwarfed by the kind of power influence that is being brought to bear by the institutions the left controls.
Yeah, I think the role of big business in particular is quite concerning because they wield a lot of influence, unaccountable, undemocratic influence over society. I thought it was very good that DeSantis went up against Disney. I think those are the kind of battles we will need to see where democratically elected politicians will take a stand against unaccountable corporations that are pushing certain agendas. I think we need to see more of that. But yeah, I think there is this problem in society. Social media plays an important role as well in terms of spreading these dangerous ideas. Young people spend their lives on social media, so they, especially things like TikTok, where they imbibe all these crazy notions that you can pick your pronouns and pick your sex, and the kind of things that the libs of TikTok exposes incredibly well. And I do think there are two battles going on in society. There is this one side that is dragging young people in particular away from the ideas of biology, of tradition, of family life, of reason itself, and dragging them into this world of this crazy world in which you can remove body parts, mutilate yourself, break your voice if you're a girl, or castrate yourself if you're a boy. And I think it's going to stack up to be one of the greatest medical scandals of the 21st century. I hope that in the future we will look back on this and think, how did we let this happen? And then people who did let it happen will have some very serious questions to answer.
And you think people are motivated by money? I mean, this is going to be a big business. What, I think $5 billion by 2030?
It's a huge business. I think people have got a lot of money invested in this and a lot of moral capital invested in it as well. I think lots of people use this issue as a really important platform for virtue signaling. The way in which here in the UK, the way in which you signify that you are a decent person who belongs in polite society is by being pro-trans. And if you are trans skeptical, or if you are concerned about what's happening to young people, then you're expelled from polite society. You are no platformed from universities. You are not given certain jobs. You can be sacked. So people have a lot the elites have a lot invested in this in terms of actual capital, moral capital, social capital, which is why it's so important to push back, because we do need that the democratic voice to say, look, enough is enough. We don't want this to happen to kids. We don't want men in women's spaces. We don't want women like Riley Gaines to be cheated out of the awards that they deserve. We want a fair society with sexual equality and reason. And I think the more of us who make that case, the more we might push back against these vested interests.
We need like a cultural Brexit on this issue. Brendan O'Neill is chief political writer at Spiked. If you're not familiar with his work, get familiar with it. Always good stuff. Brendan O'Neill, thanks so much for joining us. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thank you. And he joined us on our turnkey.pro answer line.
You're listening to Chicago's Morning Answer with Dan Proft and Amy Jacobson on AM 560. The Answer. Signature Bank is